I have just had a conversation with my dissertation students talking about what is a suitable research topic for an undergrad or postgraduate dissertation. I will do a few videos in the next weeks talking about dissertation projects from start to finish. Now, today in this short video, I focus on selecting a suitable research topic. The most important issue when it comes to suitability is time. When you do a dissertation project, whether it's undergrad or postgrad, you are very limited in terms of time. You only have a few weeks to actually understand the literature, start doing your analysis, and then writing up your dissertation. In my case, when I do research, I can take months, I can take years, and quite often it takes me maybe 10 years to complete a research project. You don't have the luxury of time. Hence, you have to think very carefully about selecting a topic that you can manage in a very, very tight time frame. The first thing you have to think about is novelty. I would not care too much about novelty. You don't really write a research paper. You don't have to explore something totally novel and exciting. So I usually advise students to select a topic that is established, where you find a good body of literature, where it's quite easy to find resources, and also where there is an established body of evidence, so you know what works and what doesn't. Try to stay away from very recent political events and trying to understand the impact on financial markets. Of course, there's a lot that you can do at the moment, in particular in the UK. However, you don't have sufficient literature for this type of work. Next, think about the methods. Personally, it's much better if I see that a student really understands the methods well than doing something very cutting edge without a proper understanding of the underlying theory. In particular, when it comes to finance and economics, there are some exciting areas, say asset pricing, where you also go deeper into applied mathematics, which is all exciting. However, again, consider your time constraint. Now, in my field, finance, it's actually quite useful to know maybe Stata or eViews, maybe SPSS to analyze your data. You don't really have to go into some more serious programming. Again, if this is what you want to explore, you can talk about this to your supervisor, but have in mind that you don't have a lot of time to learn new methods. The next thing I always look for is access to data. So I always tell my students, before you nail down your topic, make sure you check, do I get data and is it easy to obtain? I don't encourage students to collect data. I don't encourage students to do any actual primary data research because the time constraint is too severe. Now, what about your own interests? Of course, they do matter, but I think at the end of the day, you have to indeed focus on what is needed to get you to the finish line and what is needed to get you to a high mark in your dissertation project. So you have to talk about marking criteria. However, ideally you should have an interest in it. Yeah, so I think that's important, but sometimes there is a bit of a trade-off. Quite often I get the question whether I should select a topic that might be relevant for my future employer. My usual answer is, honestly, nobody cares. It's highly unlikely that your dissertation topic will feature in any interviews. And also, end of the day, who is your future employer anyway? It's very, very likely that you will change your jobs quite frequently. Well, I certainly have done this, so I would not care too much about it. So best you focus on a topic that can be done in a certain time frame, where you have a good body of literature, where the methods are more or less standard, where you don't have to push yourself too hard on getting access to data. Now, I always get this. Now, what is my contribution as a student writing a dissertation? The honest answer is you won't make any. It's not going to happen. Yeah. So I'm doing this now for 20 years. Have I ever seen a piece of research done by an undergrad, postgrad that made an actual contribution to the literature? The answer is no, certainly not. Sorry to disappoint, but it's not going to happen. However, you can add some value, and you should add some value to the literature, and there are ways to do it. But to make a real contribution, we talk really about a PhD project, and for that you will spend 3 or 4 years of your life to complete. Now, in terms of value added, there are of course areas that are very hard, like new theories, some theoretical development. Never saw this in 20 years. New methodology, again, I haven't seen this in 20 years of dissertation supervision. New data, yes. So I have seen some projects where data was collected mostly for historical periods or data which is not in the public domain. So there could be indeed a value added. However, it is time consuming, and if you want to really collect data and spend all the energy, you have to think really, what's your output? Is it only the dissertation, or do you maybe want to publish your work? Sometimes you might be able to solve problems in different ways, or you apply a theory which hasn't been applied in a certain context, and by doing this you might get some new insights. So again, this is an area where you might potentially add some value. I think the most obvious thing to do is to do a kind of a replication study. So what do I mean by this? You take a good paper in finance and economics, you read it very carefully, and then you use data for maybe a different country or a different time period, and you replicate the same kind of steps of the study. So in this case, you get, of course, different insights because your data is different. You have a different country context, or you have a different time period, and there might be certain things in this time period that might be worth investigating. And in this way, your study is adding value. And at the same time, you have a good structure in place because you can rely on published papers that already have done a similar type of analysis. So this is low risk, but still adding value. And this is, in my view, the easiest approach to add value, make somewhat an empirical contribution, and also achieve a good outcome in your dissertation. Good, so that's all for today. So when it comes to the suitability, the main issue is timing. You have to make sure you can deliver in a short period of time. If you have any questions, any suggestions, just leave a comment below and I'll try to get back to you. And I will do a few more videos on dissertation projects. The next one will talk about research questions and how to think about them and how to structure your work. I see you in the next one.